The votes are in. All but one award has been handed out. Who will win the first ever Tailgate Award? Grab a drink and join us on this week's Tailgate. Hey, what's up, everybody? I am Luke.
Oh, I'm Michael.
And I thought I was Luke today. But no, I'm Dennis.
Dennis is here today.
Yeah, he's here.
I'm in camouflage.
We got the Pate State. You know, I don't know.
It's a late Halloween.
The fan club over here.
We agree with him sometimes, you know.
I was more dedicated to the costume.
Yeah, Dennis for some reason doesn't want to shave his head.
Beautiful hair.
I feel like I would be doing something else then.
Oh. Well, anyways, before we get on to the talking about the awards that were handed out this past weekend, we'll go and talk about our sponsor, which is Explore Nash. If you are interested in learning about any kind of current events, crazy things that are going on around town in Nashville or Middle Tennessee, or just want tour ideas or just local spots to go and eat at and cool new places to visit, check them out at Explore Nash on YouTube or Instagram. So we had a bunch of awards that were handed out this past weekend.
There were
a bunch of different awards.
I'm disappointed I never got a ribbon. I wanted a participation trophy or something.
That's because you just never won anything.
Like I said, participation.
I know.
Well, I mean,
We're not going to go into participation.
Yeah.
Were you invited to New York? Is that why you were here? Not here last week?
No, I had to go. Somewhere in Kentucky, lose a couple things.
Oh, that's right. Sorry. I'm sorry about your dark horse there, bud.
Me too. We couldn't even beat a backup quarterback.
No.
You could beat a third-string quarterback.
Oh yeah, that's true. Never mind.
But
there's no tape. There's no tape on him. That's why.
Weirdly enough, though, this awards season has been probably one of the more controversial, and I don't know why. Like, it's just like I've seen a lot of people really upset with who won the Heisman, which is obviously supposed to be the premier, most prestigious college football award. And just kind of we're going to go through a couple of the different major awards and stuff like that. But like I mean, we'll start off with the Heisman because that's the most important one supposedly. And and it's the reason why I say that is that's the one we've been talking about all year too. But Jaden Daniels, who was one of our contenders early on the season and before, Dennis actually called him as his number one
Heisman
pick.
favorite, yeah.
Before the season started, for some reason, even though he was easily statistically the winner, there was just a lot of controversy around him.
I think he was probably also the most fun to watch, though, too. Out of all the Heisman candidates.
Well, I think this goes to show exactly what I have thought the Heisman has been for years and years, and it's the best player on the best team. It's kind of what it has seemed for so long, which I think has taken away from the guys like Jaden Daniels who go out and they're the reason their team is winning day in and day out when they do. And, I mean, Jaden Daniels, Dennis, you even said it. It's like if he had any kind of defense, it's kind of like the Caleb Williams effect.
Yeah.
Either one of them has a defense, and
it's a whole different
story.
Like, they would easily be, I feel like Jaden Daniels, LSU would have won at least, 2 of the games, 3 that they lost. Like, especially the Bama game, they would have easily won, I feel like, if they had some kind of defense. But look, Caleb Williams didn't even have a defense at all either as well, and his numbers don't really compete with Daniels.
Nope.
Daniels is a dual threat. Didn't matter if you needed air or on the ground. He was able to do it all for you.
He did it all. And I think, like, you look at, Michael Penix obviously was chosen, was second in all of that. And he even won the, the Maxwell Award.
Yep.
But we talked about this earlier. Penix is second. And you can go back at his games and see that there were 2 or 3 games that he didn't show up. Yeah. There was a game that he didn't throw a touchdown. I think maybe 2 games that he didn't throw. 2 or 3. But there were multiple games where he wasn't even a factor in their victories. They just happened to win. And so when you look at kind of the contrast of that, it's like, well, who are you going to pick? The guy who his team won every game?
Yeah, all games.
But he wasn't necessarily the reason or even a contributing factor in all of them, or the guy who went out and busted his tail every game, was going for like 400, 500 yards a game. And even though they lost some, he was the best player in the country this year.
Mind you, like he had a total of, I think, like exactly 50 touchdowns. I think the next person like in history that had the highest ones, I think, was like Burrow, and he had like 51, I believe, or 52 just a couple years back. So I mean, if he was unanimously able to win the Heisman, why isn't this guy? And he played like just crazy ball. Like it was just
Burrow had a defense.
yeah. That's
That's
true.
that's the reason.
Yeah.
So Burrow's team, national champions, like
Like, they had it all.
they had it all. They were a complete team, so he looked
Well,
better.
yeah, and the thing is, LSU hasn't even looked bad against the teams they lost against.
Right.
No,
Like again, and that's the thing that we have to
probably
remember
for
too.
FSU, but
Well, but like even then, if we look at their losses,
Yeah.
they're all to top 10 teams.
Right.
And so it's just like it doesn't really change too much from a standpoint of like all their losses. If you have good losses, they have the best losses
Right.
because all three of them.
it feels weird to say.
Well, yeah,
The
but-
best losses right here.
yeah.
Yeah,
Well, it's just
that's
like they're
It's
the
like, what are we
best
arguing
losses.
here?
And I mean like even their loss to Ole Miss was only by what, a point?
I think I
And-
think it was like the one that went to wasn't it like double overtime. Or something like that?
And so it's just like they only barely lost that, and that's because literally neither team had a defense.
Yeah.
And so sitting there, and I honestly would think at this point, because of how different the teams look, if you were to have a rematch between Florida State and LSU right now,
Especially right now.
I
Yeah.
mean,
Right.
I still feel like Florida State's defense would show up in a way that would really limit his
Yeah.
effectiveness, but I don't think Florida State will be able to win.
No,
No.
not at all.
I don't think they would be able to shut him down. I think he'll still probably throw at least 200 yards and something close to 100 yards rushing at least.
Easy.
Like
Easy.
And 45 touchdowns. I don't
Right.
know.
Yeah, something like that.
Something like that.
But so
Yeah.
yeah, I think there's a lot of people out there that think that that's controversial. I don't think any of
no.
those people
I feel
are
like
here.
the controversial would be
No.
like the person like second or third
Mhm.
can be stated. I mean, but nobody cares about who got second.
Right.
Nobody remembers that.
And honestly, Marvin Harrison being there. As an Ohio State fan, I love Marvin Harrison.
Yeah.
It's well documented on this podcast. I love Marvin Harrison.
Yeah.
He should not have been in New York.
Hmm.
Shouldn't have been in New York. Much better, much more deserving players. Than
I'm glad we have that recorded.
I,
There's proof.
I will say it. I will say it behind. I will say it on camera. I'll say it off camera.
So I mean, when Ohio State pays him $10 million to come back next year for NIL.
Oh, he's the Heisman favorite at the beginning of the year.
That's gonna be his vote again.
He's like, yeah, totally gonna be it. But yeah, I mean, it then leads us into the Maxwell Award.
Yeah.
Like, again, Penix, did he really deserve it? Like, is he like it? No, like
Right.
he's not the best player on the field by any stretch of the imagination.
Well, and I think, and we were talking about this, but I think, and I was always trying to figure out why there's like 2 Player of the Year awards as
Yeah.
well as a Heisman. And so the biggest difference is, and I'll break this down because I learned this like yesterday, but the Heisman is voted on by some media representatives and past Heisman winners.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's great. I think the past Heisman winners
Definitely should have a
they-
voice.
They should
Yeah.
have a voice. They should be able to say that. The Walter Camp, which was what Jaden Daniels won, the Walter Camp Player of the Year, is voted on by NCAA head coaches and athletic directors. Obviously, they know talent. They're able to see that. That still makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
The Maxwell is voted on by sports writers and head coaches.
Mm-hmm.
So there is still a head coaching factor in there, but sports writers are there. And I think the one thing that we can say about sports writers is the thing that they want is they want people to read their content, good or bad. They want people to click on their articles, good or bad. And so I think there is a little bit more of a level of picking the guy that maybe you wouldn't
Yeah,
go with.
they wouldn't go with, or just kind of like be different. Like, oh, this person's gonna win it unanimously. Let me just throw a vote somewhere
Right.
else.
So not saying that Michael Penix is not deserving of some kind of award, like the you almost had it Heisman. But I don't think that
I don't even think he was the best Heisman candidate in the Pac-12.
no,
Like
No, Bo Nix is
for me,
definitely-
yes, I totally
Mhm.
agree with that.
I would
Bo
agree.
Nix like had
I mean,
a way better season.
Bo
Yep.
Nix stat wise is almost identical to Jaden Daniels.
Yeah,
The
Mhm.
difference is that
he didn't rush for 1,000 yards.
he
Right.
didn't rush for 1,000 yards, and he, while it's still crucial to Oregon's success, he wasn't the only major playmaker
Right.
for the most part
No,
on Oregon's offense.
He had a bit more kind of a, I feel like,
He had a
balanced
well-rounded
offense.
They had a more well-rounded.
They had a
offense.
great backfield.
They got a
just
great
all around.
backfield,
Yeah.
and I mean, arguably, like LSU's. We'll get to this in a second, but LSU had a receiver
Oh, yeah.
that was catching,
100%.
but they didn't have anybody in the backfield. They didn't have
One
a
could
second
say
or third.
Daniels had a good neighbor.
Right. Like a good neighbor.
Anyways, that leads us into Blitnikoff.
Right.
And and the person that deserved to win, right? The receiver that deserved to win won the Blitnikoff, right?
No.
Oh,
No. Again,
well,
I love Marvin Harrison. He's going to be the Heisman favorite coming into next year. Should he return? But
I mean, he probably buy it.
I honestly think that there are two receivers that were more deserving of this award. And, I mean, obviously we all know Neighbors, right? Malik Neighbors of LSU. He was Jaden Daniels' #1 target. I mean,
Yep.
he caught it was like half of Jaden Daniels' yard. I mean,
Yeah, it was like
it was
he
some insane.
caught like 1,500 yards out of it.
1,500 yards, something like that. But then also Rome Odunze from Washington. And when you look at it, both of them had more yards. I think it was like 1,500 and like 1,400 to Marvin Harrison's 1,200.
Yeah.
Touchdown wise, I think Marvin Harrison was tied with the most touchdowns. Like it was like 14 or something like that.
Yeah, I mean, Neighbors had 14.
So tied with touchdowns. But I think this was given. So when you look at this award is for the best pass catcher in the NCAA.
Mm-hmm.
It's not for the best receiver in the NCAA because I think we can all agree Marvin Harrison is kind of that like
top two.
For sure. Well, for sure going to the NFL. I think when he goes to the NFL, he is at worst a
fifth pick overall.
And a 1B on a team.
Mm-hmm.
At worst, he is the second best receiver on a team.
Oh yeah,
and it's close.
Mm-hmm.
So he's the best, I think, receiving prospect coming out. He probably has the most, with whose son he is, with the fact that he plays for Ohio State, and they've talked him up since he's been there. He's got the most media. He's, everybody's talking about him. But in terms of this award, it's for the best pass catcher, the person who
of the season,
who has the most yards, the most touchdowns, all that. And I hear, especially Ohio State fans, and I'll call you out, Ohio State fans, right?
Mm-hmm.
If you go by projections and go, well, he had more yards per catch, and if he had the same amount, this is what he would have had. He didn't have it. He didn't have those yards. So we're not going off projections. We're going off what they did on the field this year. And Marvin Harrison was the third best receiver this year, in my opinion. Well, I would have said Neighbors.
Yeah.
Well, and honestly, like what we said before we started recording tonight, you plop in like a Penix or a Jaden Daniels or a Bo Nix on OSU, and where Marvin Harrison is not dealing with a McCord who throws some wild passes at times and has a 70+% accuracy rating. Like it's just one of those things. Like his stats would probably be in a different league that literally no one will be able to touch this year.
Right.
Considering how explosive passing offenses have been this year.
But they had Honda McCord, and that's who they had. So so it's I think that honestly, Malik Neighbors was robbed.
Yeah,
no, I mean I 100% agree with that.
I would agree with it, but we're supposed to not always agree with each other or something like that.
Sometimes he makes a good point. I gotta give it. Sometimes
it's true.
Yeah, when I'm going against Ohio State, right?
But this next one, we can.
So you're not drinking that Dr. Pepper.
So the next one, it kind of goes, kind of hand in hand with what we were talking about just before, with best receiver or best pass catcher or whatnot. The Doak Walker, best running back in the country, and I understand why. Statistically, why they picked they're like, statistically this guy is the best in the he's got the most stats, blah blah blah, he's got the highest stats, he's you had Ollie Gordon who has 258 carries for the entire year, over 1,600 yards, 20 touchdowns, all super impressive, incredibly impressive. But the Big 12 for the most part was pretty down this year.
It was.
Like the only team in the Big 12 that has shown incredible dominance all year has been Texas.
True.
And yeah, there was Texas lost to Oklahoma, but that's just because it's a major rivalry game, and you can never rule out your rival. Period. And Oklahoma really wasn't bad this year, so they just weren't as good as Texas. But Oklahoma State was not necessarily a powerhouse, and and people were like, oh well, they made it all the way to the Big 12 championship,
where they got demolished.
Destroyed. And it wasn't even close.
Mm-hmm.
And so when you see a supposed elite player on a team, you expect that elite player to play elite all the time.
True.
It's kind of like the thing that we're talking about with Penix. Why in the world is Penix being considered for the Heisman or best player when there are a couple games where he doesn't even show up?
Mm-hmm.
You have to be elite every single game. Game in, game out. Like you have to and arguably, like, if the NCAA really wants to care about the character of the kids and stuff like that, then it also should be how they handle themselves out academically and whatnot and socially outside of the field. But that's a different conversation for a different day. Ollie Gordon, super awesome dude, incredibly gifted and talented running back. But was he technically the best running back I just don't see it.
I don't see it just because, if you look at his games, there's about 3 or 4 games where he was completely just shut out under 50 yards.
Mm-hmm.
And they weren't top defenses or anything.
Mm-hmm.
But then he had really explosive games where he was getting over 200 yards or something close to around the 200s. Where it's that's where he got most of his yardage in. Because there's games, when he played Texas, he had 13 carries, 34 yards. Mm-hmm. When you talk about the top running back, Texas doesn't even have the top defense.
Nope.
Mm-hmm. You expect him to,
defense,
you expect him to, hey, you're top running back. You're in college. You should at least be getting 100 yards.
Yeah,
that's what the expectation should be.
Yeah,
and I can see that, but I'm gonna kind of stick with the same reason why I just said that Marvin Harrison wasn't. This is statistically speaking. Yeah. If we're going, who's the best running back? He has the most rush yards. Right? He has the most rushing touchdowns. So, statistically speaking, he was the best rusher. Now, you look at, again, Penix, we're going to argue that he, and I said the same thing. There are games that he didn't show up. Even though there's games that Ollie Gordon didn't show up, he still led in rushing yards.
No,
Penix didn't do that.
Mm-hmm.
Penix, the games that he didn't show up, pulled him down to where his passing numbers were not anywhere near what Jaden Daniels did. His touchdowns weren't near it. So I'm going to have to stick and say I think this was good. Ollie Gordon, he may not have showed up. Defensive may have stopped him. But even with those defensive stops, he still was, granted, 30 yards, 30 yards more. But he also did that on about 22 less carries.
Mm-hmm.
So he's, statistically speaking, the best running back. So...
No, you're not wrong. I still think he had a great season.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like I think he's very well in the conversation, the best running back season. I do think he's deserving of the award because, like you said, he had 600 yards, 20 rushing touchdowns. Mm-hmm. So he did have a great season. No wrong that can be said there. I just feel like it could have gone either way. I feel like with any of the other top 3, top 4 running backs over there.
Yeah, they could have gone either way. They would have been wrong. But no, but that's kind of, again, for me, when we're looking at these, it's look at the stats.
It's not always about you. You said for
You're
you.
Right. Well, and that's why I'm going to argue my point, because this is an opinion show, and I've got one of those.
You always do.
I do. So, again, for me, it's just going to be stats. It's who was the best.
So my thing is, and this is why I think it should be weighted in a different way, is your stats should be weighted against the conference you're playing in. If you're playing in a conference, and I'm not saying you should weight it just if the SEC is the best conference right now or the Big Ten is the best conference and whatever. As I was saying before we started recording, if he was in the Big Ten and he got these numbers, 100% impressive.
Oh yeah,
stupid impressive. He isn't in the Big Ten.
No,
he's in the Big 12, which has one of the worst running defenses in the country.
Mm-hmm.
The only one that's worse is the Pac-12.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's just like that's been my only issue with the Pac-12 having all these pass leaders all season, is because the Pac-12 just also doesn't have defenses.
It doesn't have defense, yeah.
Aside from Utah. And I would make the argument that Oregon does have a pretty competent defense. And it looks like Arizona is also starting to show some competency there too. But they're still nowhere close to the powerhouses that are definitely in the Big Ten on the defensive side. And so, like, it should be weighted. Your stats should be weighted against how efficient your conference, especially since that's where the majority of your games are played, were against your type of play.
True.
And that I think would adjust some of the weird parity that we see, where you got these players that are throwing up 3,000 passing yards in a conference that has literally no secondary, or 1,600 rushing yards in a conference that has maybe one or two teams that actually have a good front seven. Yeah. And so it's just like you put him in the SEC, you put him in the Big Ten, and it's going to be a very different game. To my knowledge, I think he did go to the transfer portal, didn't he?
I think so, yeah.
And so he may be trying to go to prove himself in a better conference that's more aimed at or more geared at shutting down a.
See what you can do against better.
Yeah, because he knows like it's not really going to change too much. Granted, Utah and Arizona are coming into the Big 12 next year, which does add some defensive competency, but it's still only two teams.
Yeah, it's not that.
When you're losing Texas, who is arguably just as good as Utah or Arizona on the defense, it's really almost an even split at that point. So that's just my thing. I think personally, we'll get to it later. Personally, who I think is a more impressive running back statistically, considering where he was playing and the amount of stats he was able to put up. It's not as much as Ollie Gordon, but he was able to still put up really close to the same amount in a much harder conference to run in. But we'll touch on that a little bit later. That takes us to our next.
The John Mackey.
Oh, the John Mackey Award.
The best tight end.
The best tight end. Oh, yeah. Are we all
I've been
surprised?
working on mine.
Oh. The buns of steel. Been watching my VHS.
That's right. Suzanne Summers.
From the 1980s.
And yes, we are old, by the way.
Well, I mean, he's old.
I'm old. Okay, thanks.
All
right, Brock Bowers, he wins.
I'm old enough to know the reference. But Brock, are we surprised?
No,
absolutely not.
And this is where statistically he's not technically the best tight end, but he consistently showed himself to be the best tight end.
Yeah.
Like he's slippery when he needed to be. He could get into spots where he had an explosiveness that just other tight ends don't have. It's weird. It's just he's one of those guys that obviously is a big dude, but just at times doesn't seem like it. He just is able to kind of
float on by.
Yeah, exactly.
He is the interesting thing for him, and again, it goes to a lot of the great combination of like speed, size, smarts, right? So he's big enough that if there's a safety or a corner that's trying to get him, he's obviously gonna just outsize him. He's just big enough to do it. He's fast enough to beat linebackers. He's smart enough if they're playing zone to know where to sit down, know where to kind of find the weak spots in the zone. And then he's smart enough when they're doing man to just run the right route and kind of, pin the cornerback behind him. So he's just that perfect tight end that whatever you need him to do or whatever he needs to do to get open, to get the pass, and then he can block too, which nowadays finding a tight end who can
most of the time it's only receiving tight ends.
Look at a lot of teams who put in two tight ends, and it's like, hey, you're the blocker, you're the receiver. They don't have to do that. They can put him in, and he can do whatever they need. Yeah. So I think, again, even with the couple games that he was out, the few games he was out, he's the best.
Well, yeah, and he reminds me, anytime he plays, he just reminds me of a Gronkowski or even even at times like a Travis Kelce. He's got the big physicality to him. He's smart. but he's also got that slipperiness to him, like Gronkowski can just weirdly get into like positions that you're just like, what in the world?
Yeah, like why were you not guarding him?
Yeah,
Yeah.
like but it's like you watch the tape and it's like, oh no, there were the 3 people guarding him, but he just found a way to get away from them.
Right.
Because one of them is not fast enough, the other one is not tall enough. So it's just like,
And the other one's not smart enough.
yeah.
Right.
So it's like, hey, I got you all 3 beat. Like,
It's like the 3 Bears.
Yeah. But now we're going to go in and talk about 2 different awards at the same time. It's going to get really confusing because Dennis is going to talk about one while I talk about the other, and it's just going to get really. No, I'm just kidding.
I was like, you already confused me.
Yeah, I know. But we're going to talk about the Bronco and the Chuck awards. So like the best defensive player, but it's one of those things where one is awarded by a bunch of sports journalists, and the other one's actually awarded by like players and coaches and like
Yeah, I think it's like by coaches and writers.
yeah,
That's what I think
like
it was.
people that actually pay attention to the game, mostly the coaches.
Yeah, the one with the coaches was the butt kiss, or I'm sorry, the butt kiss. Yeah,
no, not that one.
no, is the I don't know.
It's the Chuck.
The Chuck
Bednarik?
Yep,
Yeah.
the Chuck Bednarik. Whatever. However you said that. So that's the one that's actually has the coaches that will vote for it. While the Bronco is
A
the.
lot of Philadelphia Eagle fans are really disappointed in you guys.
That's
well,
fine.
Sorry, I'm from the South.
Yeah, just don't riot in our streets, please.
Yeah, seriously, no burning couches. Don't throw snowballs. At
Especially after you win a Super Bowl.
Not
Anyways,
gonna happen here.
no, definitely won't happen here.
Maybe a
it's-
while.
Anyways, not in Nashville. We're home of the Titans. But anyways, it just goes to show like you got a player, a defensive player, who would probably go more unnoticed because he was on a team that people like pay attention to because they're usually okay. They're usually above like one of the better teams in the ACC, but they're still not they're not a powerhouse by any stretch of the imagination. But is Peyton Wilson out of NC State, and he did like he led with like 138 tackles, which is insane. And he tied for 6th in tackles for loss.
Yep.
Which is also just incredibly impressive, especially on an NC State defense that wasn't really well known for being a good defense.
Right.
But then like
Can't forget a defensive touchdown too, man.
well, that's true.
Like,
yeah.
yeah.
Oh, and he was the 11th consensus All-American in NC State history. So like he was chosen unanimously.
Yeah.
Like everybody said you're an All-American. So
Yeah.
it was well deserved for him to win.
Yeah, well, and it's just like, but then you go and look at the Bronco, award where they just go and they nominate Xavier Watts, who again is a good player.
Yep.
I mean, you have 7 interceptions in one season. That's definitely impressive. I'm not saying it's not, but if that's your only stat line,
Right.
like what else did you do? And it just leads us to go, okay, well, if this is a bunch of sports writers or journalists that are just nominating this, they're just nominating you because you're Notre Dame.
Well, Notre Dame 7 interceptions is impressive.
Yeah.
But I mean, like you said, what else did you do? 47 tackles, forced a fumble, no sacks. So it's just kind of this again, what else did you do?
Yeah.
7 interceptions and everything else being low makes me really think that you weren't really doing much else. You were more of a ball hawk, which
I mean, it's not a bad thing.
it's not a bad
Yeah.
thing. But again, you're a ball hawk on a team that lost. Was it 3?
I believe 3 games. Yeah,
3 games?
Yeah,
So, obviously it's like I think that Wilson was doing a whole lot more to help his team than Watts was. Again, no shade to Watts because he's a great player. I just don't think that he was not the best defensive player.
Not at all. And so it's just we've seen it all year. I mean, we see it year in and year out, especially with Notre Dame. And that's one of the reasons why we're so outspoken against Notre Dame on our program is because they get way too much love from the media. And it's a lot of the times just undeserved. They consistently are middle of the pack. They're not usually ever a bad team.
No.
But they're not usually a top 10 team.
yeah.
Right.
I feel like it's one of those teams like since they're in the independent conference, if they play a couple ranked teams, they're bound to beat one of those ranked teams. Year in, year out, they're always going to play Ohio State. They always played USC in the past. So it's just like you're at least playing one ranked team a year.
Right.
Sometimes you split them. Like
Right.
But talking about a team that did make major improvements from last year and have made major improvements for the past few years, and it's mostly been because of their head coach, is the winner of, the Home Depot Coach of the Year, which again, like, is Washington Huskies head coach. Like, he really did do a phenomenal job, kept the team together even when it looked like there was, as we said earlier a couple weeks ago, no gas left in the tank. They, consistently like kept the team cohesive and kept their heads screwed on straight.
And I think
through rough wins.
Yeah, and I think, sorry, I was cutting you off there.
No, you're good.
But when you have, we've talked a lot about Penix this year and how he was kind of up and down and how there were games that he didn't show up. And I think that it's really hard for a coach when you have a star quarterback like that who, like, you want to depend on. Like, it's a lot different. Jaden Daniels, he didn't have to nobody had to worry about what was Jaden Daniels was going to do. You can just go out and do your thing. Whereas Penix, it was like when he didn't show up in the moment, DeBoer's got to find a way to win, and he's got to start changing his play calling, changing his kind of like what he's doing. So there's a lot more in-game changes that he's having to do because Penix wasn't showing up on a daily basis.
He wasn't the all-around, as you're saying, he wasn't the all-around player that
wasn't.
If you can't do it in the air, let's go do it on the ground.
Right.
Yep.
Yeah.
And then to beat Oregon twice.
Yeah.
To go in and beat Oregon twice.
I feel like that was like kind of what sealed it for me. Like,
yeah, I mean that's impressive. And
especially since Dan Lanning is easily one of the best coaches in the Pac-12 right now. Like him and his coaching staff, they know what they're doing. They know how to counter teams. They've been doing it all year.
Yep.
The only team they haven't been able to counter was Washington, and so it just shows some incredibly good play crafting.
Yep.
On especially for all the Huskies coaches, but specifically for the head coach. Like, I mean, he just did such a good job at strategizing those games. So, but then we got our assistant coach award, the Broyles Award.
The Broyles Award.
And I'll let you take this one away because you're the most excited about this one. I think.
Well, and here's the thing, and I said it in my short. The Broyles Award was won by Phil Parker, the defensive coordinator of the Iowa Hawkeyes. And the big issues that everybody's having is that Sharon Moore, the offensive coordinator of Michigan, did not win it. Now, obviously, Sharon Moore has gotten so much love. And listen, he's a great offensive coordinator. He seems like a great dude. He's getting a lot of love because he stepped in for Jim Harbaugh when Jim Harbaugh was suspended. And I think that's where everybody's like, oh, well, he's a shoo-in. He has to win this. And when you really sit down and look at it, you go, Jim Harbaugh, the only punishment he had was he couldn't be on the sidelines, right? He was still able to game plan. He was still able to coach. Yes, Sharon Moore has to go in and play call. But the thing is the head coach usually is deferring to the coordinators to play call, right?
Yeah.
So Sharon Moore really is just play calling his offense.
Like he was always doing.
And Mentor was play calling the defense like he was always doing. So not a whole lot changed. Whereas when you look at what Phil Parker did at Iowa, how was Iowa's offense this year?
Oh, it was great. It was the best offense.
I think I threw
in the
more
West.
touchdowns.
Right. It was non-existent. Like against bad teams, they played pretty good. So Iowa won this year on special teams and defense.
Yep.
Had Phil Parker not had that defense ready to play, Iowa is not 10-2 playing in the Big Ten championship. They're probably like 6-6 maybe. Like they're not winning. So to me, when you look at assistant coach, you take Sharon Moore out of that offensive coordinator role. Michigan's still probably winning a lot of those games.
See, I feel like that I would agree with that too as well. I think the only thing that Sharon Moore kind of stand on though is the fact that the most of the games that he actually was coaching were not top level talent teams. The only top level talent team that he actually coached against was Ohio State. So you can game plan as
Penn
much
State.
as Penn State as well. Okay, I guess Penn State as well. But the thing is, like when you're coaching with those two teams, the game plan doesn't always stick because those two type schools and teams they are always changing. So whatever you had game plan throughout the week is always going to be changing. So the fact that you're able to beat two top 10 teams one with the only a week notice of like, hey,
Yep.
this is the change up that we're gonna do. Because once you get hit, like, you can always have a plan, like people say. But once you get hit in the mouth, that whole game plan is going to be thrown out the window. It's like, cool, all the signs that we read, like, all it doesn't matter. Like so I feel like,
Tyson.
yeah. So like, it's Mike Tyson. I'm running.
No, I'm saying he was the one that quote. Everybody has a plan until you get.
Oh yeah,
punched in
Iron
the
Mike, man. Like, so it's like for me, like when it comes to those two games, like top level teams, I feel like he can win the award just off those two
So here's my
wins.
question to you, as a former coach, who's making those changes in the locker room? So when you come in and you do that, is it the offensive coordinator that's making those changes along with the coach, going, "Hey, this is what they're doing. Let's change it up." Are they both making those changes?
Yeah, I mean, most of the time they both have kind of opinion. They kind of bounce off each other.
So essentially, Sharon Moore has done that all year.
Yeah.
He's helped Harbaugh make those changes in game.
Mm-hmm.
So he's still been doing that all year.
Yeah,
he just now did it as a head coach.
Yeah, but now when you're like your go-to person, where you're the number one is no longer there, the head coach.
Right.
Now you take that mantle.
Mm-hmm.
So now it's like, hey, I don't have the person who has over 20 years of experience doing this.
Right.
Now, I don't know how many years of experience he has, but now I'm the number one, shot caller. I gotta make the call, make it final, and whoever goes bad, that's gonna be the blame on me. Like if they lost versus Penn State, they lost versus Ohio State, they're not gonna blame the players. They're gonna be like, we didn't have Harbaugh.
True.
Like that was gonna be like the excuse that was gonna be had.
Mm-hmm.
So I feel like just off those two games winning, I'm like, hey, I mean, it's kind of hard to ignore not to give him the award on that.
I mean, it's okay to be wrong, Dennis. That's fine.
I mean, I was right about Michigan winning, so
You were.
you just don't want to give another person a Michigan award. That's why.
Well, I mean, arguably they don't deserve them. Until the NCAA rules on any of their stuff, Michigan should be out of everything. Personally, we're not calling these games yet because the playoffs are just a few weeks away, and we'll get to those in a couple weeks. But I 100% expect Bama to skull drag Michigan, and Michigan
It's like
is
past
not-
tense now. Like,
and Michigan's not looking forward to it. That's why all the Michigan fans are throwing their pissy fits about FSU because they much prefer to play FSU right now because they know they can't beat a team like in Alabama. I don't think they can.
Yeah.
I mean,
Personally,
I don't think really.
I don't know
Any schools,
how many games that they scouted Alabama this year. So
I don't know,
We'll
and
see.
I don't think it matters. Honestly, I think Saban has been doing it long enough to where
He could change it up.
He can
That's it.
change it so fast.
right. That's
And that's the thing is that's the thing that sucks for like a Ryan Day or somebody like that who, while he's been a coach for a while, he hasn't been a head coach for that
True.
long, and so him having to change all of his signals or things like that last minute or within just a few weeks of a game are it's a much harder thing to do.
That's true.
And Saban's kind of used to it because he basically has a new
Like
coordinator.
he's seen
every
all the
freaking year.
yeah, he's seen all the tricks of the trade of every single game. Like he's played in different conferences in the NFL as well, so he's seen everything happen already.
True. And who knows? Who's to say that Nick Saban himself hasn't been stealing signs this entire time? I mean,
Yeah,
He taught Harbaugh everything.
he taught
he
Harbaugh
knows.
everything. He taught Kirby Smart how to do it. It's just like what the SEC championship was just who could steal the signs the best.
Right.
No, I'm just kidding. But
now the one award that has not been handed
Yep.
out yet is the inaugural Tailgate Award.
he said the
I
word.
said the word. That word scares me. Inaugural.
Yeah, it should scare
It's
you.
kind of
a
like
big word.
yours.
Yours. It's multiple syllables.
he could barely go over one.
Yep. So our criteria for the Tailgate Award is it has to go to obviously a singular person, singular player that
So not a they or them.
not a them, not a
That
team.
is so.
We're not talking about being inclusive, man.
Okay, sorry.
We're just talking about it's designed for one
individual
person,
player.
an
One person.
individual player. And
So we can't include James Madison in this.
unfortunately,
whole
see,
team
that's what I'm
effort.
saying. Like, yeah, you can't.
I just
But
want to be those are
essentially,
my honorable mention.
they the Tailgate Award would be granted to someone who, going into this season, was kind of they may have been a starter the year before or something like that, but were kind of more unknown or not really much was expected of them. But this year, they basically kind of became the crux of their team. That they were the
They outpunted their coverage.
exactly. So it's just like they're.
I had to stop for that one. I was like, wait, what?
You had to think about it. It's
Yeah.
one of those thinkers. And so it's just without them on their team this year, and that's why it has to be a player that no one kind of expected to show up, and that's why we're not going to have like the Bonix or the Penix on here or things like that because
we're not.
Yeah, sorry, you have to change yours. Oh, okay.
He's like, I had Harrison on mine.
Dang it.
Sorry, Marvin.
But so we're going to give you our candidates, and we are going to release a poll, and we want you to vote on who you think. This is going to be where it's different than a Heisman or anything like that. You get a choice in who wins this award. And this is not some proverbial award. We actually are going to send something out to the award winners. And we're going to, if they get it, great. I mean,
Yeah, we're not that far. We can't actually like hand it to them.
yeah, unfortunately. Now, if they win and they want to come on the show, we will gladly let you come on the show, and we'll announce the winner on our socials and stuff like that over the next week. But we're gonna basically run the poll till next Tuesday, which would be I need to look at the schedule. That'd be the 19th. So the 19th of December, we're going to run that poll until then. And that's when voting closes. And so whoever wins, we're going to announce that, and we'll be sending off an award. But I'm going to let you guys take it away with who you have as your candidate.
I'll let Luke go first to be wrong.
Okay, no, that's fine because unlike I'm good at being wrong. I'm like Michael.
Hey.
So
I mean, you're like 66% wrong, man. Like that's a pretty good track record.
Actually, I'm pretty sure I'm worse now.
Yeah. So my award goes to a guy. The Pac-12 has been a very consistent conference this year for winning awards, and so I'm gonna kind of stay there. And it's going to be Noah Fafita from Arizona, the quarterback from Arizona. Now, this guy, most people did not know much about him. I think he completed 9 passes last year as a freshman, a true freshman. This
more
year,
than I did.
he is just a couple, just 9 more passes completed than you.
Yeah.
But he had like 9 passes and like 1 touchdown last year as a backup. This year, he started as a backup. Jaden DeLora was the starter, and it was like 3 games in, Jaden DeLora had 1,100 yards, 10 touchdowns, and 5 interceptions with a 53.5 QBR. After he got hurt, Noah Fafita came in and just kind of lit everything on fire and just looked awesome. He, was part of that. While a loss to USC, it was like a 43-41 loss to USC. That was like the triple overtime, and really kind of, in my opinion, what started USC on the downward spiral was that game. He had 2,500 yards, 23 touchdowns, and an 80.9% QBR. And when DeLora came back and was ready, he was healthy, ready to come back. Fafita stayed in, and DeLora's the backup now. So I think that, when you look at him, I will say that within 2 years, he will be in the top 5 for Heisman. He will be competing for a Heisman in the next 2 years.
I don't think he'll be the best quarterback in Pac-12 though.
Probably not. I mean, that's going to
be
that's a 2-horse race right there.
Yeah,
but
he won't even be in the Pac-12.
He won't. He'll be in the Big 12. But I think wherever he goes, he may not be at Arizona, but within 2 years, he will be in New York as a Heisman candidate.
Okay, I know. Actually, I mean, he was a great pick. I enjoyed watching him play. Like I remember we would always talk about that. I would say my pick. I mean, I'm gonna stick in the Pac-12 with you. I'm not gonna leave you alone right there. Was actually Dylan Johnson from Washington.
Yeah, okay.
It's the fact that I feel like if it wasn't for him, whenever Penix was kind of having his down game like that, he definitely stepped up. And similar to you, where when they were actually playing USC, is like when he actually finally kind of took off. Like the USC game, he had 256 yards rushing. So 4 TDs, him alone almost defeated USC alone. Mind you, like they don't have that great of a defense, but they're high powered offense. Like it was a 52-42 game, so every touchdown counted, every single one of those yards counted. He was averaging almost 10 yards a carry.
Yeah,
so that can't be disappointing. And towards the end of the year, when they played Utah over 100, mind you, they only won that 35-28. But Utah was always known to have basically kind of a really tight defense.
Yep.
And then even when they played Oregon, the most recent game they had, he had 28 carries, 152 yards, and 2 TDs. So he became a threat later on in the year. It wasn't a whole season because I don't know if you guys remember, Washington, before the season even started, lost their starting running back.
Oh, yeah.
Cameron Davis.
Yep.
He had over 500 yards the previous year, had about 10 yards rushing, or 10 TDs rushing. And so that was supposed to be the starting running back.
Right.
Dylan Johnson here was actually a transfer from Mississippi State. So he was new to the system. He wasn't nowhere on the radar. He was like, yeah, I'm going to play, but I'm not going to be the starter. Penix, from the get-go, was going to be like, hey, eyes on him.
Yeah.
Like, so Dylan Johnson was a forgotten person in his own backfield, like in his own depth chart of just looking at the running backs.
Yeah.
So I feel like I have to give it to him where I genuinely believe if it wasn't for him, Huskies would not have continued their undefeated season. He bailed Penix out when Penix was not reaching the potential he should have been reaching.
That's a great wrong pick.
Yeah.
Well, so mine is another running back, and I'm gonna stay in the Pac-12. I'm just kidding. No,
he's got to go to the SEC.
I got to go to the SEC. No, I kind of alluded to it earlier, but I think who should have been considered the best running back in the country, and just especially considering the way he just tore apart SEC defenses. Which
what was one of the defense? Like he had like 200 yards rushing. Or something
and
that.
like over 100 yards, receiving and stuff like that. Yeah, that was Tennessee.
Oh, I knew you would remember.
Yeah, I watched that game. Talk about a game where a team got skull drugged.
Michael was not happy in that game.
I am a pro at understanding how this entire stuff works at this point. But no, it's Cody Schrader. That kid is insane. He came he came on to Mizzou in 2022. And he was okay last year, but he came in from Truman, Truman State, and
the mighty TSU,
yeah, which is a Division II Division II school, and he came in as a walk-on to Mizzou, and from there just kind of just blew up. He's a small dude. He's 5'9". 214 for a running back.
He's 6 foot if he stands somewhere specific.
That's
wear
true.
some boots.
He wears
we could be tall,
high enough heels. But he's a smaller dude. But you could never tell the way that he ran. He ran incredibly powerful.
Yeah, he did.
He's incredibly smart. The guy. I mean, the reports that I kept on reading about like how he would overtrain just. The rest of the team, if he missed a practice because of something unavoidable, he would find a way to make up that practice. But even if he was just playing out on the field by himself, which is just insane. Like he clearly cared about being the best. And when you're able to, against top 25 opponents, average 6.2 yards a carry, that's insane against top 25 opponents. Ollie Gordon couldn't do that. And that's one of the reasons why I'm like, I'm going to go back to that. Like, it's like, yeah, his stats weren't as good as Ollie Gordon's. He had almost 1,500 yards and only 13 touchdowns instead of 20. But that was in the SEC, which has a much better run defense. Like almost every team in the SEC has a better run defense than any team in the Big 12. And aside from Vanderbilt. Sorry, Vanderbilt.
Yeah. You have to be mentioned.
Okay.
Huh?
Their places, their stadium is hard to play at.
It is. There's a lot of other.
It's even hard to find
other factors going on there, but it's just one of those things. Like I just feel like Cody Schrader, like he's one of those guys that, when he got into a groove, especially, he just would light teams up. I mean, if you're able to light up Georgia, you're able to light up Tennessee. I mean, he just destroyed Tennessee, which was. Honestly, a lot of fun. Even as a Tennessee fan, it was a lot of fun to watch. Because I'm like, man, like he's the only running back that's been able to do that to us all year. and it was incredibly impressive. So it's just like I just have a ton of respect for what he was able to do at Mizzou this year, especially just considering the fact that he nearly doubled his output from the actually more than doubled his output from the previous year, and the conference actually arguably got harder, not easier to play in. Like, and yeah, Mizzou did make some adjustments that allowed him to shine a little bit more. They had brought in an actual offensive coordinator and stuff like that, but it still doesn't change the fact that if you look at his, like, who he is as a person, like 5'9", 214, that's not the make or build of an SEC running back. That's a build of a Big 12 running back,
right?
But not an SEC running back. And so the fact that he's a legit dude. He's clearly, he works hard. He's incredibly smart. Like, I think honestly could have a really good, tenure in the NFL if he continues to stay healthy. So we'll see with that. But that's my pick for the Tailgate Award. Right. So
another good wrong pick. That's
I'm gonna go with Joe Milton. I'm just kidding.
Right.
He had to win something, I guess.
Yeah, we got a consolation prize.
Yeah.
Yep.
He's not accurate enough to hit that.
But before we wrap up, we'll just kind of run through real quick the bowl games that are between now and next Thursday. So we've got, let's see here, on Saturday, the 16th, we've got Georgia Southern against Ohio in the Myrtle Beach Bowl.
He said Murder Bowl.
Like, dang. We've got, that's the
kind of curious to
XFL,
watch that one now.
That's the XFL Bowl. You've got Howard and Florida A&M at the Cricket Celebration Bowl. Jacksonville State versus Louisiana at the R&L Carriers New Orleans Bowl. We've got the Lou Groza Award winner for the best kicker in Miami of Ohio against Appalachian State in the Avocados from Mexico Cure Bowl.
That actually might be a good game.
I'll bring guacamole.
Yes. We got New Mexico State at Fresno State for the Isleta New Mexico Bowl. UCLA at Boise State. That's kind of an interesting one.
That'd be actually up
the Starco Brands LA Bowl. And then the Saturday ends with the California at Texas Tech at the Radiance Technologies Independence Bowl. Okay. These are lots of words for these bowl names.
Yeah.
I like citrus, but no. Monday, we've got Western Kentucky at Old Dominion in the famous Toastery Bowl.
Oh, yeah. I've heard about
that one is the most long-standing bowl. No, I'm just kidding. Tuesday, we've got UTSA at Marshall for the Scooters Coffee Frisco Bowl.
Oh, Scooters
And then
Coffee.
Thursday, while we're not while we're doing this, but South Florida at Syracuse for the roofclaim.com Boca Raton Bowl. No, I had to double check. Yeah, it's roofclaim.com Boca Raton Bowl. So there you go. There's the bowls that are coming between now and the next time we will see you.
Yeah, that sounds interesting. Thank you for reading all of those off, Luke. I really appreciate that.
That was by memory.
Well, we're kind of out of time tonight. We're going to talk a little bit about the transfer portal, but we don't really have too much
Riley
time
Leonard's
left.
going to Notre Dame.
Yeah,
Dylan Gabriel's going to Oregon. That's
interesting.
And McCord supposedly is going to Nebraska. I don't know.
Nebraska, not Nebraska.
Nebraska. I don't know. Matt Rule could say it really weird ways. I don't know. Anyways. Well, thanks for joining tonight's Tailgate. Come back next week, grab a drink, and join the conversation.
This is so wrong.